confident that an EU bailout package for Portugal will be changed after the party made big gains in Finland's election over the weekend. Finland is the only country in the Eurozone that requires parliamentary approval for EU bailouts. Delighted to say Megan Greene has joined us, economist for Western Europe and the Economist Intelligence Unit. How big an event is this? Because I think their vote was much more than we expected. I mean, I was looking at pre-polls and it got down to maybe 16% of the vote for the True Finns. They got over 19%. So there's a real problem here for broader Europe, isn't there? That's
right. They're a problem whether they're actually incorporated into the new government or even if they're not. First of all, looking forward at the coalition negotiations, it's going to involve at least three parties because they've all come so close to one another in the election. I think that there's no telling how long the negotiations will really last, which matters mainly because Portugal's on a time frame. It needs to get a bailout. Before June, when it has a massive funding out.
Well, let me turn this on the head. Are the True Finns actually a voice of sanity in Europe? And I don't know much about their radical, I don't know anything about their immigration views, I don't know how right-wing they are, but I'm just talking about this one issue. Are they a voice of sanity saying, no more bailouts, this is wrong? Is that the right thing, actually, perversely, for Europe?
It depends on what the end goal is. I think that these bailouts are actually just kicking the can further down the road, and that restructurings in Greece and Ireland, potentially Portugal, are inevitable. But it is worth kicking the can down the road until these countries have a primary surplus so that they can restructure their debt and return to growth. So one could say that actually no more bailouts actually is the right thing to do. But I think that Portugal probably will get a bailout regardless. I think even if the True Finns are incorporated into government, part of them being incorporated into government will have to be their agreement to a Portuguese bailout. That being said, the Finnish government will come to a new test in June when the EU has a new summit looking to increase the lending capacity of the EFSF, which will actually only end up having to increase the burden for AAA-rated countries, of which Finland is one. So I think no matter what, the True Finns have really been sort of driving this anti-EU discourse in Finland, and we'll probably see a less EU-friendly Finnish government.
Okay.
They're not a radically right-wing party elsewhere either, which you kind of would assume when you kind of hear their views on Europe. Do you think we should expect similar views to start coming out in other European countries as well? Because I mean, there's certainly a certain logic to their views on the bailouts.
Yeah, it's true. We've seen the sort of similar anti-EU views come out elsewhere. I mean, we just had the Irish elections in February. Sinn Féin did extremely well based entirely on a platform of being anti-EU. And so I think that we might see this. We're also seeing far-right parties emerge in other countries such as France, where the EU isn't really being targeted as the other, but foreigners are.
And yet, when parties like the True Finns potentially come to power, depending on how the coalition works out, aren't they in a position where ultimately when they get the job, they just have to be pragmatic and can't really stick to their election rhetoric anyway? Because we're in the EU, right? There's not a great deal we can do about that right now.
Yeah, no, that's right. I think often when populist or far-right parties do come into government, they lose a ton of popularity because they end up having to concede a lot to their coalition partners. So for that reason, the True Finns could potentially choose to stay in opposition, where their voice will probably be loudest anyhow.
Who else do the True Finns speak for? I mean, who else in Northern Europe is equally worried about what's going on in Southern Europe? Because, as I say, it's mixed messages coming out from the German political establishment. Have we got a north-south divide here? Are we going to see more clarification rather than opacity over this north-south divide, this two-speed Europe?
I think that's right. The Netherlands is also coming out against all of these bailouts, or at least expressing concern over the bailouts. So I think you're right. It's a north-south divide as well as a core periphery divide that's clarifying.
All right, Megan, I think we've got to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Very good to see you.